Ons het die voorreg vanmôre om te gesels met Kelly Du Plessis. Nou, Kelly Du Plessis is van die organisasie Rare Diseases SA en ons selfs môre met haar spesifiek oor die kwessie dat mediese fondse sommige rare siektes nie dek nie, of weier om dit te dek. En ons gaan ook gesels oor Fight for Zack, die regsgeding wat op hierdie stadium in die gang is. Good morning, Kelly.
Morning. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great having you. Thank you for the time. Kelly, let's start with the Fight for Zack campaign. This campaign, what is it about and how did you get involved?
Well, essentially, Zach, at the time that we started this whole process, was a 2-year-old little boy who was diagnosed with Hunter syndrome and was desperately needing a medication called Elaprase. Now, that medication is the only medication in the world. It's registered in South Africa. Every other medical scheme that has patients with this condition is funding it as a PMB, and yet Zach's medical aid simply refused to pay for his medication. Now, this medication it's not, a medication that might make a difference. It is a life-saving treatment. It will keep him alive, and his medical scheme has just simply refused. And as the patient organization dealing with rare diseases, we felt it was our mandate to take this issue up for him.
What has been some of the biggest legal battles that you guys have faced, you and Zachary's family, and with regards to court hearings and medical aids?
The reality is that you're up against corporate giants, and as a young family, his parents are young parents. They've got 2 kids. He's got a little sister, and they just don't have the financial means to be able to take on a multi-million-dollar industry. And essentially, most medical schemes have legal firms on retainer. So it doesn't matter to them if they drag this thing out for 3 years, 5 years, a decade. It really makes no difference because they risks are capped. Whereas this family has had to do absolutely everything, not only to pay for the expenses in the interim, to try to keep Zach as healthy as possible so that he is still in a position to benefit from treatment when this is all over. But obviously also to take on this legal bearing. It's been absolutely brutal, and our legal system is not very quick, as we know. They've taken us now to the Supreme Court on an interim ruling. It's going to make zero difference to the long-term outcome of the case, but it just shows their appetite to litigate against a tiny little child. It's absolutely nonsensical.
When something like Hunter syndrome affects a child, you need action as quickly as possible, and for the child's health. But the impact of a court case like this, dragging out as long as it is, what's the potential impact for all other rare diseases, people suffering from rare diseases? What's the impact that this court case will have?
So I think it's important for viewers to understand that while we're fighting here specifically for Hunter syndrome and Elaprase, which is an expensive condition and expensive treatment for a rare condition, ultimately, this is around PMBs, prescribed minimum benefits. That is what this case is around, and the interpretation thereof. And it will be a ground ruling in the sense that whatever the outcome of this is will have an impact on all South Africans who are medical scheme members and who are reliant on PMBs, because we are delving into the interpretation of the law to the extreme in this case. And if we get this right for this child, it will have a positive impact for all medical aid members who have had an issue with regards to PMBs and how they get interpreted. And that relies back to this issue of what is available in the state sector. Now, as a medical scheme member, if I wanted the care and service delivery that is available in the state sector, I wouldn't pay the premiums that I pay every single month to be on a medical aid. You join a medical aid for the catastrophic, for these instances where you have a massive medical issue and you are like, right, I've got medical aid, I should be fine. And then it boils down to fine print and scheme rules and all this, interpretation and things that change every year, and your benefit changes that you don't necessarily, you need a degree to be able to understand, all the fine print. And medical schemes have taken the view that they have a responsibility in this case to all medical scheme members, their entire membership, which is correct because it is some form of social reinsurance. So that is right. But if you asked a medical scheme member, would you be willing to pay an extra 10 cents a month to ensure that rare diseases are covered and children like Zachary get their treatments? I don't know many that would say no, that they would find that unaffordable or unreasonable. But medical schemes don't ask their members that question.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's run very much like a business rather than a business of people and looking after the people. And like you say, most people that can afford a medical aid pay it for the extreme, because we do not want to be at a public hospital. We want to have access to certain medicines, for example. And I think that's why a lot of people do go out of the way to try and belong to medical aid. And then to get something, a rare disease, and then being told, okay, well, you can't have access to certain treatments. It does feel a little bit like it's not really putting the patients above business, but business above patients. And that's quite sad to hear. For people that don't know, can you just give us some background of Hunter syndrome? What is it that Zach is dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
So essentially, Zach's body doesn't make a specific enzyme, and the result of that, him having that deficiency, means that his body can't break down carbohydrates correctly. So they're like complex sugars, etc. And it's on a very, very minuscule level. But what essentially happens is that the organs then start taking strain, and they start developing what is called gags. And that overaccumulation of gags ultimately leads to almost all the organs becoming quite enlarged, and I want to say fatty, for lack of a better word, even around like his auditory canals, etc. So it leads to long-term hearing difficulty. Now you can understand a child at this age, in this stage of his development, not being able to hear correctly leads to development delay, because they're not able to develop speech properly, they're not able to interpret language, etc. That has a long-term impact on the outcome of his life. And then ultimately what will happen is Zach's pulmonary system, his throat, etc., the accumulation of those gags will result in a thickening of those airways. And Zach will end up becoming fully ventilated. And, that will be ultimately what takes his life at the end of the day, will be his inability to breathe independently.
Sure.
That is terrible. Rare Diseases South Africa are fighting battles like this battle for Zachary. But the broader vision, the bigger vision as well. You're fighting battles for rare disease patients on different levels. What are you doing at this stage to focus your campaigns a bit more? Where the campaigns are going? What are you aiming at?
So we focus on four things: advocacy, patients engagement, patient navigation, and research. And, for patients find us at all stages of their journey, either prior to diagnosis, in the thrust of trying to get a diagnosis, newly diagnosed, at the end of life. We find patients all along. And what we want to do is be able to support them at whatever stage of that journey they're in. So running peer-to-peer support groups, maybe connecting them with other patients who've got similar conditions and similar symptoms, ensuring that they're able to access the treatments and interventions that they need, ensuring that they are recognized within whatever system they're accessing services. All of those little things go on to really make a massive difference to patients at the end of the day. You want to feel like you've been recognized and you've been seen and you've been heard, and we provide them the village to be able to have that necessary support.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for the fight you're fighting, and keep us posted on what's happening, please.